Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Email us freedom@charliekirk.com. We have a real treat in store for you. The second half of this hour with me is my friend Victor Marx.
Good to be here, brother. Yeah, good.
So we're on radio stations across the country, podcasting, live stream, and all this. So we've done a couple deals together, but why don't you reintroduce yourself to our audience? Tell us about yourself.
Well, it's I had an organization that primarily, the easiest way to say it is we set captives free, both physically, those who are being trafficked or abused, those who've been affected by pedophiles, both in the U.S., overseas, Middle East, Southeast Asia, south of the border. And then we help people with trauma, people who've suffered or been traumatized all across the board. And then the final thing is spiritually, we help people who are held captive in darkness or oppressed by darkness get set free.
And so talk more about just, you do this in Iraq, you do this in America, and one of your focuses is to try to hold pedophiles accountable to justice and make sure their victims are made whole again.
Yeah, and I want to put it in context for people why we do what we do. We have an incredible team. Our COO, our Chief of Operations, retired from Delta. His last 10 years in the military was as a troop commander at the unit, and over 1,000 missions, never lost a man. And he's one of the best hunters I've ever worked with. So, the manifestation of darkness, both in our country and others, is when people, evil, go after children. I mean, we're seeing it with the whole abortion issue. This has been a tactic of what we believe is evil, to kill, hurt, destroy children. So we have always stood for, the sanctity of life. And I got a good injection of that when I worked for Focus on the Family with Dr. James Dobson as his assistant. I thought, this is great. Somebody's fighting for the most innocent people. Then when my wife and I started this organization, we couldn't believe the number of kids being abused or trafficked, both here in the U.S. and overseas. We've been doing this now for 20 years. So,
wow.
Yeah, while there's plenty of organizations and people really out there talking about it, we've been quietly doing it in our way for about 20 years now.
I was getting an IV yesterday at our friend's place, Prana, which is great.
Great.
Best IV place on the planet.
Right there.
If anyone's ever in Phoenix, got to stop by. And the lady giving me the IV, she's like, I watched Victor's documentary, and I just cried myself to sleep. So tell us a little about that. I mean, you've been doing this for a while, front lines, in pretty, let's just say, heavy theaters.
Yeah, I think we got best known several years ago when ISIS invaded Iraq, and, we deployed there as a high-risk nonprofit organization. We're a ministry. We developed a safe house. We brought in Free Burma Rangers and then turned them loose. And that's about all you can do with Dave, and watch him go. Another great organization. But I think people started recognizing, because I would post things. I remember doing a post live. I wasn't very good with the whole social media, but I'm like, hey, this is Victor Marx here in Iraq. And you can hear shooting behind me, and it's ISIS. And I hear somebody go, hey, that's ISIS. I turn around. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's them. Hey, I've got to go. We're about to hit a village where ISIS is.
Are you in the car when this is happening?
No, I was standing outside of it. So they were dropping mortars on us, trying to defend their position. We were embedded at the time with the Iraqi army. And our niche was, we're not there to kick doors open. Shoot people in the face. I think some of that happened, but our goal was to reach women and children who had been held captive. And most of the girls, we were just there more recently, and within 48 hours of being back in country in our safe house, a girl who had been abducted by ISIS 7 years ago, one of the ones very difficult to get, she got free. And we had her in our house 48 hours after we had boots on the ground. And she was 11 when she was abducted. Her parents were killed. She's now 18. Beautiful girl. Broke nose, broken back, and the biggest smile you ever seen. And I said, why are you smiling? She goes, I'm free. So that really, again, we feel like God's hand of blessing and favors upon us with a great team in order to do his will this way to fight the manifestation of evil.
And so talk more about kind of what you said, that when evil really manifests itself, goes after children. So we just saw Roe versus Wade overturned. You know, we see, unfortunately, a lot of the grooming of children in America.
Yeah.
Sexual grooming of children in classrooms with the kind of LGBTQIA+. Then we see outright pedophiles and kind of the sexual exploitation of children. We see the trafficking of children. What is the spiritual component of all of that? Because it's hard to believe that happens naturally.
Right, Charlie, and I'm so grateful that you understand and ask the right questions, because although there is the carnality of man and a depravity of man, when you start talking about abusing children, that's a whole different realm where evil does insert itself. I mean, think about Pharaoh wanting to destroy all the boys, right? Yeah. It's been going on since the beginning. Moloch, this is evil, offering our children. What I would say today is that, and folks listening or watching, I come from this background. I was abused as a child and tortured, and I was left for dead. So my motivation is to help reach kids and stop bad guys from doing this. My granddaughter called me yesterday. I got a text, and my daughter goes, hey, she wants to ask you a question. So I called her. I was actually in a gun shop. It was really funny. I said, hey, what's going on? She's 4-ish. She goes, Papa, why do you go after bad guys? I thought, what a great question. And I said, so that bad guys don't do more bad things and that you feel safe. So the evil that's involved in this it's very real, and we've seen it at the highest levels, from ISIS fighters to cartel members to, and in America, it doesn't matter. Politician, preacher, teacher, there's an evil that infiltrates men's hearts and minds. And I believe this with all my heart. The greatest disturbance of our culture in America, that is the root cause for so much broken relationships, drug addiction, the inability to make the best decisions, often stem from child abuse. Because if the enemy, I heard this, if you build a child, you won't have to repair an adult. And the enemy knows that philosophy. Hurt a child, you'll spend a lifetime trying to repair an adult.
One of the themes we've been playing with politically is this idea of the parents' party versus the groomers or the perverts' party, right? And I don't want to overly politicize this, but Victor, it's hard not to when you have people that say it's okay for kids to chemically castrate themselves. It's okay if they're 12 years old and they think they're another gender. It's okay for them to get abortion without consent of their parents, or it's all these things where it's just the loosening of morals and the immoral type unclean spirits that seem to almost be introduced. And so a lot of parents feel as if this is overwhelming, that they're starting to wake up. They realize my children are being targeted, not just that they might be, the old way when I grew up, it's like, oh, they might get kidnapped at the grocery store, which happens still. In Dallas, Texas recently, young girl was sex trafficked by just going to the bathroom at a Mavericks game. Terrible story. But it's deeper than that, though, isn't it? It's more widespread. Can you talk about that?
Well, yes, and I agree with you. While it doesn't matter, again, what party, left or right, there are perverts and pedophiles and wicked people all the way around. However, I will say this. When you try to legislate evil, then that's a pretty darn good indicator that this group has sided with darkness and are yielded themselves, and they believe it's okay. Their minds are so convoluted, they actually believe it's okay to affect children in a way that it's unthinkable. 30 years ago, unbelievable. Nobody would have thought this stuff would have been happening.
Never.
So I blame part of it on conservative and even Christians and Muslims who have conservative positions for being passive.
Yeah, I totally agree.
You have to be, there was this horrible theology that to be more like Jesus, you just be meek and nice. The reality is meekness is power under control. And I don't see anywhere in the Bible it says be nice. Kind, yes.
Patient, yes.
Yeah, right. All the fruit of the Spirit.
I struggle with patience. I tell people it's the one I struggle with most.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm very, I have to learn how to just say, do I need to hold my tongue on this or throttle somebody around the neck? But, and in our line of work, you get the opportunity to do both. So I would say this for sure, please, parents, dads, anytime a school board or anybody is trying to affect your children or your family, you as a protector and provider have not only a right, you have a responsibility for God to stand in the gap and say, not here, not now. I remember years ago, 25 years ago, I took my children and family to the library. While we're in there, there's a guy on a computer looking at porn. And I couldn't believe it in a public place. And this was before porn was really.
Wow.
Yeah. I just walked over there and tapped him on his shoulder. I said, what are you doing, man? He goes, none of your business.
Who is this again?
This is just a guy at a public library looking at porn on one of the public library computers where you could go and rent or whatever. I just said, hey, man, you need to take this stuff home. Don't do it here. He goes, none of your business. I can do what I want. I said, well, I guess I can too, if you want to live by that. And I said, hey, everybody, attention. This pervert right here is looking at dirty, nudie pictures in a public place. And he says, before I could finish, he shut the computer. He scrambles out like a little rat. Everybody starts clapping. And I thought, not on my watch, man. I'm not going to be passive. I'm going to point out
because
the evil
a kid
that
could be walking by,
easy.
Right?
A wife, a female.
Someone who's struggling with that themselves that wants to, be away from those images.
Yeah. So that was, 20 years plus ago. I just tell people, be aggressive for the right reason.
So I want to ask you in the next segment here. Some people will say, for example, when I get into a debate with a leftist or when I get a little heated about an issue, they'll say, Charlie, you shouldn't fight. That's not Christ-like. You should just let the other side do whatever they want to do and let it be. Is that true?
Well, I think there's a flaw in the theology of Western Americans that I hold responsible at the feet of the pulpit because so many pastors, because if we're just being honest, so many of them, I'm going to say it, are cowardly. Their spines are filled with gel instead of titanium. So they justify and use Scripture as a way to say, meek, mild, turn the other cheek. And here's what I would say. Let's talk about Jesus. Is he not the one that went into the temple, saw his father's house being trashed
and desecrated?
Oh, yes. And then he took time to fashion a whip. I always like that. He took time. I think he was just looking at the people he was going to be smacking with it, going, oh, yeah, you're the ringleader. You're going to get this one. And then he tumped tables over. Can you imagine at any church function if Sally Joe and Billy Bob are cheating on their spouses, but they're sitting next to each other at this church function, and I just went in there and just threw a table over and, food goes everywhere.
You brood of vipers, right?
And I just go, both of you better repent because you're destroying lives. You're going to destroy this church. This is 11. Man, people don't believe in that anymore. And although that would be an extreme case, I have been very forthright in saying, come on, people, we give a nod. And again, I think part of it is it's why pastors don't talk about certain issues because you can't impart that which you don't possess. And if they're not living a right life, I say no purity, no power. They don't want to stand against certain things. And it's not about perfection.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that, no purity, no power? And then tell me about the perfection deal.
Yeah, well, it's simple. The Bible talks about sin that you want a clear conscience. I mean, a man can sin, a woman can sin without consequences on the outside, right?
Yeah. There's secret, private sin, public sin. There's
Right.
3 types of sin. Right.
But your conscience always will work against you. You open a crack for the enemy come in and just hassle.
That's what he does. He's the agitator, the prosecutor. Right?
Yeah.
That's what it literally means in Hebrew.
Accuser of the brethren,
Yep.
the oppressor, and this causes problems. So I believe that the Christian, even just yesterday, I was in the Gospels. I listened to all 4 Gospels. You know, I'm over here just trying to spend a little time.
Mini sabbatical.
Yeah, and I love listening to the Gospels. So I listened to all 4. And one thing that stood out was when they came to arrest Jesus. And it was Peter that lops off an ear. And Jesus said, put the sword back in its place or its sheath. He didn't say, melt that thing down and turn it into, a fan. He's saying put it in its place.
Because there will be a time.
There will be a time. And later he told his disciples, hey, y'all are going to be traveling on the open road. If you don't have a sword, sell your cloak. Y'all need to get one because there will be evil, wicked people that will try to attack you and stop the mission. Therefore, you will need to use that as a form of true self-defense.
And one of Jesus' harshest teachings was about the abuse of children.
Oh, my. No, people don't want to remember that one. It's better that a man have a millstone tied around his neck and throw. Now, listen, because I've worked in other countries, I've seen what they do to offenders of children, from being tied up and beaten in public to all the way to being killed. And in America, I think the Christian faith has been hijacked by, whether you want to call it woke or passive or liberal. It's like, hey, if anybody should be strong, bold as a lion, but yet compassionate and gracious, right now I'm in the middle of working on a book called The Dangerous Gentleman. And that really will be able to help people understand.
And articulate a lot of this.
Yeah, I think
Beautiful.
so.
We're out of time. VictorMarx.com. That is VictorMarx.com. You have All Things Possible Ministries.
Yes.
And also, Victor was the one that connected me with the Bad and Canine that got us Mr. Briggs, our dog.
Yep.
And you got your beautiful dog right there. And so it almost might be in the live stream shot. That's just great. You guys can always email us your thoughts, freedom@charliekirk.com. Take out your phone and subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast. You guys have a Victor Marx podcast too, right?
We do. Yeah.
You guys should check it out.
Thank you.
Victor Marx podcast. As we say goodbye to our national radio audience, you guys can always subscribe to our podcast 24/7 on demand, Rumble, Getter, and yes, we are on Real America's Voice for the first 2 hours every single day. So we see you guys there tomorrow. Thanks so much. Victor, thank you.
You bet, brother.
God bless.